Let's now welcome the moderator of the Q&A, Peter Hayes. Peter has been a member of the Spiritist group Love Light in Newark, New Jersey for several years, where he teaches guitar to kids and adults. Besides lecturing at previous symposiums and doing several episodes of Living Spring on Cardac Radio, he was on the editing staff for several main Spiritist books. Let's give a round of applause to our speakers and moderator. Huh?
How are y'all doing? Good. First, I just want to say, to reflect on the topics that the speakers have presented, to put the time and effort it takes to come up with the presentation, boil it down to 25 minutes, it's a lot of work. So I'd like to thank all four speakers for their time and effort. So I've got a few questions. If any of you have a question that you want to ask, write it down. It's not too late. We'll go as far as we can. And we're going to try to finish this up by around 12:35 or so. Alrighty. First question, Julio. You talked about, of course, comparing creationism and evolution. And they deal with the physical in many ways and what we can actually observe. But what about the way, how does Spiritism expand these ideas to the universe and to the evolution of other planets and so forth? How does this actually occur?
When Peter Hayes introduced the speakers, he was thanking us for the preparation of the lecture. But I think I share a burden here with my fellow friends. It's the fact that when you have 30 minutes to explain such complex subjects, you have no idea how hard that is. You know, give 2 hours, you know. It's like you're asking someone, what's the secret to world peace? 5 minutes, you know. Very hard. So the topic of evolution and creationism, it's very complex in nature because you're talking about origins. And everything that has to do with origins, it's complicated to understand in the evolution that we find ourselves in. And my main concern is that these lectures, they go on YouTube. And people who never heard about this subject from the lenses of Spiritism will be listening to this stuff. And they might judge us based on what they hear. So because of that, I truly apologize for the lack of time that we have to explain such complex subjects. But for one thing is for sure, we Spiritists, we do not claim that we know what God is. We don't. Because we truly don't know what God is. As a matter of fact, Emmanuel, who's a highly evolved spirit, very respected in the Spiritist community, in the book of his own name, Emmanuel, when he talks about evolution, he says that spirits of his level have absolutely no idea what God is. They can only be certain of one thing, that it exists. That this supreme intelligence and the first cause of all things exists. But what is it? They don't know. But what they do know is that evolution applies to everything in the physical and the spiritual realm. Evolution of matter and evolution of spirit. And if someone is truly atheistic, they're always looking for evidence of things. And one of the evidence that we have to speak about these subjects, it's one particular medium, someone who is between worlds. His name is Francisco Cândido Xavier. This man barely finished elementary school, barely finished, because he had many responsibilities in taking care of his own family. So when he became an adult, he had no time to study, do research. All he did was work, work, work in order to sustain himself and parts of his family members. And he received more than 400 books. What do we mean by this? There were spirits who used his hands in order to write books. Now, someone who is truly atheistic, they would say, well, what is the purpose of writing all these books? To make money for himself. I just want to make sure that everyone understands that he donated all the books to charity. And he is the most read author in South America. Only 10 of these books would make him a millionaire. And he lived by his own means through work. One of the books that he wrote is Evolution in Two Worlds. And one day a reporter asked him, would you please describe to us what was your emotion and feelings while you were receiving the book? Can you tell us something about the book? And he says, well, I was very happy to be an instrument of this book, but I must confess, I have no idea what the book says. And reason being, it's because you must have at least a bachelor's degree in biology, chemistry, geology, so you could have a very light perception of what the book is trying to say, because it's so far advanced. Because what the book is trying to explain for the common reader is that evolution happens not only in the physical plane, but in both planes, the spiritual and the material plane. The interesting thing is, if you are an honest atheist, a materialistic, someone who only believes in the natural world, you will accept the explanation that it is impossible that by natural means life evolved to the point that we find ourselves right now. One of the explanations to this is the phenomenon called the Cambrian explosion. The Cambrian explosion is a phenomenon that took place 512 million years ago. And what that phenomenon consists of, it's all these complex life forms emerged. But the fossil records before that does not show simpler forms of life evolving to become so complex. The life forms appeared complex in this phenomenon called the Cambrian explosion. So a true materialistic, atheistic, but honest individual who doesn't have any preconceived ideas about his lifestyle would say, okay, I admit this, all these lives appeared. It could have been that other civilizations from other planets designed this life, and then natural evolution took its course. We Spiritists, we say exactly the same thing, because we go with science, as Allan Kardec stated. Do not accept anything, ponder, rationalize, and go with science. And we believe in the same thing. Highly evolved entities designed the beginnings of life. Natural and artificial selection has been in control. But not only of biological forms, but all matter. The universe had a beginning, and that evolved into stars, into galaxies, and so are we here. But then I only have 6 minutes to explain something very complex.
I'm glad you're the one who answered this question.
Okay. This question is for Marcia. Marcia, this is more of an ethical question regarding a situation that many families often. Hello? As we all know, in today's health world, we can keep someone alive for quite a while. But if a family is faced with the possibility of deciding whether to end a person's life or prolong it, what is Spiritism's view about this?
Well, thank you for the question. This is, Spiritism tells us that we should understand that as scientific progress comes in, that we should allow those progress to the technological instruments to allow us to live. Why is that? Let's pretend, for example, I am in a coma, and I naturally am there. But that one breath, 1 minute of consciousness after, I don't know how long it took for me in that coma, allows my spirit to grow at the level that I needed. That consciousness of my spirit in that 1 minute, it was worth it. Now, let's talk about our material lives. I think it's very important for us to understand, as we discussed earlier, that we are here to improve, we're here to learn, to grow, we're here to be happy. We're not here to cause harm. So from material lenses, if the choice to live forever in a coma will hurt your family, you may choose to go ahead and take away the plug. I ask for permission to go back to what I've experienced this past several months, because my family too decided not to resuscitate my mom, and it was very difficult. It broke the family apart. So the previous decision to not resuscitate was revoked, and she then went through all sorts of intubation and all of those medical types of steps for you to be kept alive. And those are that group of individuals that were very attached to the material life. They did not have anything to prepare them for death. And a miracle happened, because not only did she remove everything which would have led to her death, she survived, she thrived for 8 months. She retroceded to maybe 20 best years of her life in 8 months. And that was a gift to us, to the family. It gave us the time to learn and to be reconciled, to confront death, until she said goodbye. So I think it's a matter of us understanding that there's always the material aspect that we need to not make a judgment, a blank statement saying go forever or not. Thank you.
Thank you.
Peter, I just add one thing here.
Sure.
When she referred particularly to her mother, who is 91 years old. And I think it's, since we're not related, it's pretty clear what to do. Allow the disease to take its natural course, because eventually you will die. But since this topic is so sensitive, if you have someone who's 25 years old, they get into a car accident, and they're in a state of coma, what to do? The rule of thumb is, if the machine it's being used to keep the heart, the lungs, and the brain is active, do not pull the plugs. Reason being, it's because the spirit is in the body and is learning from that experience. However, if science has stated there is no life in the brain, which is the seed of the spirit, there is no life in the brain, and all organs are functioning fine, you can clearly pull the plug. You're not expediting death. You're allowing the disease to take its natural course. Because if all organs are functioning, but there is no brain functioning, then the individual is no longer using that body.
Thank you. This next question is for Flavio. Flavio, in this particular instance, would this be fate or destiny? A person is murdered by another person. Is it fate or destiny for the victim of that murder?
Let me see if I understood the question. So there is a homicide, a murder,
Mm-hmm.
and then is it fate or destiny for the victim who was killed?
Yeah, how does one determine, is it fate or is it destiny?
Okay. So we've all heard loud and clear, there's a concept called action and reaction, right? Everything that we do, there's a consequence. We all also learned through Spiritism that the causes of our afflictions are either from this life or a previous one. So that particular scenario, we may not understand what caused it, right? But that was the resulting of events of somebody having the intention, a thought, an idea, vengeance, or some kind of emotion to go out there and pursue that crime. Are we all clear on this? There's no confusion there. So, is it fate or is it destiny for the victim? The question is still an interesting one because if you look at, I'm the criminal, that I portray that atrocity of ripping someone's physical lives out of the body, right? I must be punished. I must, go through all the, repent. I take it back. I want to, so the whole process takes place. If you are the spirit, the problem is if you are the spirit that for some reason that happened to you, right? So let's say you wake up in the spirit world. Oops, I'm no longer there. Somebody assassinated me. How do I see this? Then you go back into all your previous lives and you see, what have I done for that particular individual, for he or she to have this anger, vengeance, hatred against me? Or have I even done anything at all? Because what we don't realize is that oftentimes what we believe it's coincidence, it's not really coincidence. Nothing is by accident. Yes, we have to watch and pray. Others, thank you, Suzana, for the clarification there. We have to do that, right? But it's really important to understand as life progresses, we have to remove ourselves from the physical body only and look at from the continuation of events. This life is only one chapter of our lives. So it may have been fate for you to go through that difficulty or that atrocity in this life because you had so planned in a previous one. We don't know. That's why it's very difficult to say one or the other. But it's definitely caused by an individual that went there and pulled the trigger, pushed you off the cliff or whatever. Right? Please.
One of the biggest learnings for me about Spiritism is the concept. It's just a simple, but it changes one's life. The concept that there is no victim, there is no perpetrator. When you move that from your equation on judgment of any circumstances, including murder or death, you remove the sense of good or bad. Is it fate or is it destiny? Does it really matter? Right? It could have been a victim of an event. It was not his destiny to have someone kill himself. But the fact of the matter is that we don't have the lens of being able to really see the immortal soul, right, in his own journey. And I think that's the biggest thing for us to start thinking about is whenever we think of each one of us as immortal souls destined to be pure spirits, all of this becomes just details. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
Now I want to add something else. It just came back to me.
Okay, go ahead.
Thank you, Marcia. I do believe it's important to, if we are really dedicated ourselves to progress, to learn, to develop, and this is our goal for this life, as you explained to us, right? If we're stuck in a situation, I don't know what to do, am I going the right direction? And people don't realize that if somebody doesn't like you for whatever reason, let's say an obsessor, either incarnate or discarnate. Oftentimes, if we really stop to say, you know what have I done to that individual so that he chases me all the time? What have I done to you, Julio, that you're always on my back, trying to do something for me? It doesn't happen, just right? So I think if we have the heart-to-heart conversation, I know that sometimes we can because it's a discarnate spirit, in our prayers, right? Before we go to sleep, right? Really practice intelligent sleep, trying to really understand, because there are no victims. If that happened to us, guess what? We're in that mix together, one way or the other. And that is still a learning opportunity for all of us to do so. So take a step, take a stop, ask yourself a question. Why is so-and-so always going after me? Something you must have done in the past that has caused that individual to cause something to you, right? Think about that.
Thank you. This next question is for Suzana. When I talk to myself, is that me speaking to my guardian spirit? If not, who?
Hello? When I'm talking to myself, is it me speaking?
Yeah, if I'm having a conversation with myself, having some thoughts, am I talking to my mentor spirit? Or if I'm not, who am I really talking to? And I'm just thinking.
I don't know. Who knows? Who knows?
What are
So
some
really the answer is I don't know,
Yeah.
but I'm going to say something about I don't know.
How don't you know?
Which is who knows who is listening, right? So we shouldn't really worry about who is listening. We need to look at the content of what we're saying. That's really what we need to worry about. On the other hand, if you have a thought, is it yours or was it suggested to you? Well, what difference does it make? The important thing is what it is that you're thinking. What is it that you're coming to you? So it doesn't really make a lot of difference to identify the source. It distracts us from analyzing the content, which is really what we need to be worried about. But just be sure that as you talk to yourself, someone is listening, and perhaps a crowd is listening and is responding to your thoughts. Not to be afraid, just be aware, be conscious of what you were posting, as I said.
Whoops. Quick follow-up question to Suzana. Speaking of thoughts, how is thought related to magnetism?
That's a great question. And again, I'm going to go back to Julio's comment, right? 30 minutes to talk about thoughts. I was like, how can I make it so that people can understand those very complex concepts? And so I would say for whoever asked this question to go to Genesis. There's a chapter that talks about the laboratory of the invisible world, and there's a description of fluids. And that is where I also took the source where it says that thoughts manipulate the subtle energy. So fluids, another word for energy, is neutral. And we manipulate both outside of us, but we're also energetic beings. And we donate of our fluid, of our energy, of our vitality. So the consistency, the power, the direction, and the quality of our feelings will affect how the energy is moved. So that car that was constructed was the result of a persevering and strong preoccupation of someone. So the same way that we build outside of us, we also donate our own energy, our own fluids, and we can make things happen. by the use of our thoughts. So there's a straight correlation between magnetism, the donation of energy, and our thoughts. In fact, it cannot happen. I mean, some people, I shouldn't say that, because some people are so full of fluids that they actually donate sometimes without even having awareness, or spirits can actually utilize their vitality without them being awareness. But the fact is that we use our thoughts to manipulate, to guide, and to give the fluids a direction and a certain quality. I don't know if you guys want to add something to that?
Can I add real
Go
quick?
ahead.
So, thanks to a lot of the recent studies in quantum physics and quantum mechanics, we understand that new ways of describing energy. Right? So we know that energy is not only electricity as we used to think 200 plus years ago. And we also learned today that our thoughts are also energy. So we can actually measure our thoughts into waves. Right? And by measuring these waves, we have some interconnectiveness with other waves that are the same types. That's why you can actually explain through science telepathy and how people communicate with each other without talking, just through thoughts. So if that's the way, that's magnetism per se, right?
It wasn't the very definition of Emmanuel, creative force by the means of subtle waves.
Yep. So it's connected, right?
Thank you. Sometimes in these questions, I'm going to rephrase it a little bit, and this will be the case here. This question I'm actually going to direct to all four of you. If any of you want to comment, please do. Why does God allow so many devastating, horrifying, unjust occurrences to those who are most innocent and pure? Or even, let's say, why is cruelty to animals tolerated by God? And why do those who commit such bad acts seem to be allowed to get away with it? Julio.
Everything has to do with your point of view. What is your point of view? Is your view of a point. So if your view of a point is from this planet only, that you have one existence, life has absolutely no meaning. This is why there are so many atheists that reject the idea of creationists, because the explanation that is given of God does not make any sense whatsoever with what they see in nature. Especially the God of the Old Testament, a very vengeful God, a very partial God that selects one kind of beings but loves other kinds of beings. It's a God that is very brutal, a God that is very selfish, a God of warriors. So from that point of view, life doesn't make any sense, and you have atheists who reject the idea of God, and those who doesn't understand God but believe in God can't comprehend these disparities, these tragedies in life. But if your view is from the point of the spiritual world, meaning that this one existence is nothing but a fleeting second in your life, and let me open a parenthesis here. Spiritism does not teach that we have many lives. Our life is just one. Our physical existences are many. And what we label as innocent people, they are innocent before our physical eyes, but in the course of things, in their full life, which is the spiritual life, they are not innocent. Either they have done something to deserve the pain they're going through, or that pain serves as an awakening mechanism for the spirit to start their evolution. And reason being is because evolution happens from the moral point of view in two ways. Either we evolve through love or we evolve through pain. I'll explain. To evolve through love will be for us to listen, to be humble, to acquire knowledge from other people and apply into our lives. A quick example of this, you're a teenager, your mother comes to you and says, do not smoke, do not smoke, do not smoke. And you, by being a humble teenager, you say, well, my mother cares for me, she loves me, let me not start smoking whatsoever. And then you grow up and you become a healthy individual. So now you avoid sickness to yourself because you listened to your mother. One can say that the voice of the Supreme Intelligence spoke through your mother's throat, giving you that guidance. Now, let's say I am a proud teenager. And what's a proud teenager? I know everything, there is nothing that you can teach me, and I'll do things on my own. And as a result, I will smoke. And now I'm 45 years old, and I have asthma, emphysema, bronchitis, or lung cancer. So when I get the diagnosis of lung cancer, I throw the cigarette away. And now I realize that pain is teaching me exactly what I refuse to listen from love. So people will evolve either through love or through pain. But what I also want you to consider is this. Evolution is towards infinite. There is no end. And even if we are going through trials and tribulations that we label them as pain, it will come into a moment that this period that took us to evolve, to become from a simple organism, an ignorant individual, to a being that knows everything, that period that took us to evolve, in comparison to our existence, will be so small, almost unimportant to us. The problem is why we are in the painful process, without the knowledge why we are in pain, we think it's for the infinite. But when you gather this knowledge, then you completely change your point of view. And when you change your point of view, you change the way you feel, and then you change the way you act, and you change your destiny. In Christ's word, the truth shall set you free. So we are free from the burden of thinking that that suffering will be forever.
Thank you. Flavio?
Thank you, Julio. I think I would like to add a couple of things, if that's okay with all of you guys. To me, the most comforting message of Spiritism is a message of hope in the future, right? So if you are a parent, for example, of 2 children, and one of them is normal with all the limbs, functions properly, and the other children, or one child functions properly, and the other child has some sort of disability, whatever kind we're talking about here. Do you love one more than the other? No. Simple as that. What is God to us? A parent, right? God is our father, mother, parent that loves us all the same. So it wouldn't be fair in our own simple, right, small comprehension to believe that God loves us in one way, that we can speak, we can walk, we can talk, versus not loving somebody else, that it's in a different situation. Let's juxtapose this to accidents or tragedies, right? As I mentioned, the tsunami. Does God love people here more than they love people in Indonesia or Japan? No. But if we don't remove ourselves from the physical bodies, and you look at our existence through multiple chapters, like Netflix series. If you pick up a series on Netflix and you only watch one chapter, can you really talk about that series? No, you can't. So you have to watch the chapters. You may know, yeah, it's a police, it's a thriller, it's a drama, right? You know the idea, but you don't know the entire, series, the entire topics that's going to be covered in that series. That's us, folks. That's us. Sometimes we might be the perpetrators in one situation. Other times, we might be the quote-unquote victims in an event. So for the person who asked that question, my recommendation, which I can go over in 30 seconds, the book called Planetary Transition, that talks about these tragic accidents, incidents, right, that happen in the world that I highly, highly recommend. But one thing I'll leave you, again, the most beautiful thing about Spiritism for me is that it comforts my heart. That while nobody here is special, God doesn't love you more than anybody else. He loves us all the same, with all the love, care, and mercy that we need to do what? You stumble across something, stumble upon something, come on, dust it off, keep on going. He gives us multiple opportunities to amend mistakes, to correct ourselves, to really bring us back towards destination. And if you're curious, how can I know what that destination is? You may use a compass or a GPS called the gospel.
Suzana?
Yeah, I'm just going to add a little bit to one aspect of the question, which was why God allowed those things to happen. So we, in our phase of evolution, and you find this in the Spirit's book, we are learning still by contrast. We need contrast in order to learn. Very much like children, when you're starting to teach them, you say, this is dark, this is light, this is tall, this is short. So the kids get the cards that shows them the difference. We are in our spiritual infancy still, and we need the contrast. The other concept that's important to understand is that from evil, we extract good. And so when Jesus says it's necessary the scandals to take place, but woe to the one who is doing that, it's necessary for those things to happen so we can learn from them. It's a point of view, or the view of a point. So when we look at progression, evolution, we're talking about atrocities, but we have come a long way. The number of individuals that commit atrocity these days is a big minority. And what we need to put into perspective is that there was a time that these atrocities were well accepted in our society. Today we call them atrocities, and they weren't considered atrocities. Today, just the fact that we call them atrocities means that we have learned from, where we were, and we have evolved, and today we have laws and we have policies that protect us against those individuals and that try to organize certain practices in our society. So the important point to take out of this is that God allows because it ends up being a learning tool for us. Every time we go, I'm always talking about this. We are today a society where we are having a difficult time relating at a personal level. We relate more with our phones than face to face. This is going to create problems. This is going to create imbalances. So it's necessary for the imbalances to take place. So you have an increase in isolation, an increase in suicide among teenagers, and many other things that will start to happen. God let it happen, because when we get to the bottom of the bottom and we look at ourselves, we're going to be forced to create solutions. And so this is how evolution takes place. We are free to do whatever we want. Our actions, when are disorganized, they will take us to the other end, which are the consequences. And God allows it to be this way because when we are miserable, we are going to together revise how we're using social networks, because they're not evil. The problem is not the instrument, the problem is the use of the instrument. And so once we're dealing with the level of psychiatric disorders, isolation, kids and adults that don't know anymore to relate, and we are dealing with a very difficult social problem, then we're going to start studying. Science are going to look into that. We're going to start looking into education, and we're going to do a U-turn to find the midway where we're going to learn to live in equilibrium. So that's why, I think.
Thank you.
May I add one more
Marcia,
point?
we got like a minute and a half, so if you
Yeah.
could say, wrap it up for us.
Yes, thank you. I just wanted to also remind us of something that Julio mentioned, right, when he talked about the book, The Selfish Gene, and he talked that it should be the altruistic gene. If we can find and document altruistic measure steps in animals, of course, for survival of the species. Us, as humans, as much more evolved humans and beings, we should recognize that the altruistic gene exists in us through compassion. It exists in us through the God that lives within. And I think it's very important because in those moments of collective destructions and catastrophes, that's when we see so much of that. And it was discussed by Flavio as well. So I think if nothing else, this is to teach us, Suzana, that it's in us. We are loving beings and we have compassion in us. And I think that's the amazing thing for us to leave this question with. Thank you.
Thank you.
Peter, I know this is our closing statement.
Yeah.
It will be 5 seconds. It's just because it's my last time I can address the audience.
Okay.
And because I'm here from New Jersey, and we are all very passionately about this movement, and I want to just thank everyone that came. We want the movement to grow, and one way of growing this movement is to be very thankful to those who participated in the movement. So all of you, my friends, who contributed for this day to be possible, from the bottom of my heart, we New Jerseyans, we are very proud of the work that we see here today. Thank you so much.
Thank you. I want to thank all of you who submitted questions. There are some really great ones here. Unfortunately, we are short on time, but I will give them to those who are in charge, and I believe there will be follow-up. Thank you.